Welcome back to the Matchbook Betting Podcast, where we're here for the second of our Rugby World Cup pool betting previews. Joining me, as usual, is the big man, Aidan Sully O'Sullivan, and Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting. How's your betting been going this week, lads? A few interesting games midweek. Any good for you, Sully?
More down than up. Cannot make head nor tail of this Japanese weather. Cannot make head or tail of some refereeing decisions. Couple of bad beats, backed under 52.5 in Italy and Canada. Got beaten on the last play, one of the last plays with that. I backed USA team total as well over. Thought the day would be a bit better. Didn't get it done. Tough going for the USA backers. I was just, there was a lot of guys got on a half time -40. That was a pretty tough one because, in fairness to England, they were very relentless. And last weekend was great. I think this weekend is probably a small bit of a dampener on that, but let's see if we can find some value on him.
Yeah, I mean, dampener, rain, weather. Has this been affecting your betting at all, Mark? Has the unpredictability of the Japanese weather been throwing you through a loop?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare, really. I'm sure when Sully and I spoke off air, really, I've kind of almost wrapped weather now because it's just it's too hard to second guess, and I'm making too many views based on the weather, which is either coming or not coming when I've kind of thought the opposite, really. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. I think my biggest missed opportunity was in midweek. I was quite keen on Uruguay with the handicap start. Looked at the 50-1 on the high street. I'm sure you could have got much bigger on the exchanges, but decided against it, and then watched him marvel as they took Fiji apart. So yeah, a bit of a shame.
Yeah, that's the one that gets away. So there's always one every World Cup, isn't there? And that hopefully wasn't it. Hopefully we can find a couple more before the end of the tournament. Before we move on to the weekend's games, what do we make of England? I mean, there's a Welsh lad and two Irish lads here, so we probably don't focus as much on England as maybe we should somehow. What do you make of their performance against the USA?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with it. I mean, it was obviously a massive improvement on the Tonga game. That being said, like, obviously they made the changes, and it just goes to show they've exceptionally good depth. I thought George Ford was magnificent. The forward pack were really good. Backs looked exceptionally dangerous. Centres especially. We could have had a red card in the first couple of minutes, but we'll get to that some other side. Another one on that red card. So I backed this anti-post market over 3.5 red cards prior to the tournament. I should be up by now, Alun, especially since there should be 2 in that Russia and Samoa game. It's been crazy.
What do you make of the standard of the refereeing generally so far? There's been a lot of criticism of it on Twitter, and even World Rugby said it's not up to the standard they're expecting. I mean, what have you been? Has it made any impact on some of the betting markets? Do you think?
Well, it should do. I mean, the first couple of games they weren't reffing the offside, and we saw in that New Zealand South Africa game, especially where fly half is back in the box and there's someone in his face straight away. Like he's standing like, I think you made a point on Twitter as well. He's standing like 5 or 6 feet behind the ruck, and there's still someone there right away. And it's just not, if it's not being refereed. But all that being said, if we're Rugby are coming out and they're getting on the referees this week, that's a really positive sign. So we should see some uptick in improvement. We hope.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I mean, we're hoping to get some patterns. See how things were shaping out in terms of the weather, in terms of the way things were being reffed, the breakdowns or whatever, or as you say, the red cards, yellow cards. If anything, I'm more confused now than I was at the start of the tournament. I don't know about you, Mark, but it feels like it's harder to kind of discern what's going on in this World Cup than it was before the tournament even started.
Yeah, for sure. I think just a cautionary tale really from my side. I always enter major tournaments, whatever sport it is, with a bit of a reservation across the first round of matches. I think we can often be, called in for criticism ourselves for kind of overplaying teams and underplaying teams, depending on how they went in the first week. And I think you'll see that with Ireland and Scotland. I think Ireland were absolutely excellent in that game, absolutely. But I think you need to look at Scotland too and suggest that they probably weren't anywhere near their best. I think it's kind of. I've heard a lot of Irish media already talking about the quarter-final against South Africa, and it just kind of. I guess it's just the conservative side of me kind of wanting people to just calm down a little bit. There's an important game to play on Saturday, and Scotland aren't going to be as bad as that for the rest of the competition you'd expect either. So, and also I guess you look at the outright market, the kind of quick reactions really to those opening round results. Ireland have been cut, South Africa have drifted, as you probably would expect, depending on those results. But really, the bigger picture doesn't change a huge amount. New Zealand were favourites to win the competition. They were favourites to win Group B. and Ireland were expected to play South Africa in the quarterfinals as well. So I guess the market just expects South Africa, or expected South Africa to be slightly better and Ireland slightly worse. I don't know, but I think it's slightly overreacting to one game so far. There's a long tournament to come ahead of us. There's plenty more rugby still to play, so I wouldn't be making too many snap judgments straight away.
Can I just make one point there, Al? I mean, we look back at last Saturday. What a roller coaster of that game that France and Argentina was. I was on France, Mark was on Argentina. We were texting each other. The three of us were texting each other back and forth about it. Like, if any team could actually mess up that halftime lead, it was the French. And crazy game. And I mean, it's kind of a weird opening weekend. I think you gents found this as well. I'm sure a lot of people watching or listening today. We're after 3 games of rugby by 1 o'clock, and you're there in the afternoon. You're thinking to yourself, okay, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. After 3 games of rugby, absolutely drained after. You know, we've had our bets down, and we're like, okay, what do we do now? Like, so yeah, it's an interesting dynamic with the morning kickoffs for sure.
It's a real test of stamina. Although I think it was last Sunday there was 22 hours of live sport that was available to you. You started off with the rugby, moved into the Premier League, then moved on to the NFL.
That's why I had Monday off. Last Monday off, Al. Yeah.
Right, let's move on to this weekend's game. Otherwise, we're just going to end up chatting about refereeing decisions and weather for the rest of the hour. Some big games this weekend. Huge game for myself. Let's kick off with that one. Again, you know, speaking about recency bias in betting markets, I mean, I don't think there's any team that's subject to that more than Wales or Australia, for their ability to kind of dip and surge in form. I mean, where are you seeing this? Where are you seeing this market in a minute? Talk us through the opening lines.
Yeah, the opening line is pretty much similar to the line it has been for the past couple of months. There hasn't been a major, drift on this. Wales are just a slight favourite, 1.5 point favourite on the main handicap, and you can back them on the match odds of 1.8, Australia 2.36, and the draw is 26.0. So obviously, we're looking back at last weekend's games. You know, Australia obviously struggled against Fiji. Wales looked really good against Georgia, albeit that Georgian fringe defence, I don't know what the hell they were doing in the first half. They did get it together in the second half. We were chatting off air yesterday. I liked Wales in the spot for a while. I have done for a while. But it was also kind of an indictment, and I said it on last week's one, that I just don't think Australia have that kind of 10-12 combination and even on back to 15 right yet. And I think they've finally... I don't think Michael Cheika listens to this podcast, but I'm sure he knows.
He should.
Everyone else knows my views on Bernard Foley. He is the best tender, and playing Tumu or Leali'ifano there is. I don't see the point of it. But obviously, Foley needed to kick up the ass, and he's obviously got it with the 2 guys being in ahead of him in the squad last week. He's back in there. Guinea is back in there at 9. I'm surprised Curtly Beale is gone. That is a bit of a strange one to me. I'm just thinking back to the game last weekend. He didn't do that much wrong that I saw, unless it was something else that's not there. Reece Hodge is a loss. Dane Hill at Betty's back at 15. Their pack looks good. I mean, you'll have to give Australia credit. Where you would have targeted Australia in previous World Cups was in the scrum, the set piece. But that front row is exceptionally good, and they've got a really good rolling maul. Other side of the coin, Wales, they stack up very well. Exceptionally strong set piece. Defensively, really strong. Georgia did put it up to them in the second half. That game was won. Bigger looked good at 10. I thought Tomas Williams coming off the bench, he looked really good. He's a good guy to bring in off the bench. So similar to Gareth Davies as well, of course. And I suppose, obviously Georgian defence is pretty poor, but we had discussed prior that the Wales backline weren't creating the opportunities to get George North and Josh Adams involved. They did they had 15 clean breaks, which is very encouraging for them. However, that Australian defence is far superior to Georgia. And the kind of angle I'm looking at here, Al, unfortunately, we don't have a total out yet because we're recording this on Friday afternoon. And the lines will probably be out Saturday morning for this. If this total comes in at 45-46, the weather, and we keep our fingers crossed on this, is saying that it's dry. If it's 45-46, I'll be playing the under here all day. I don't see where there's 5 or 6 tries in this game. There may be 2 or 3, and I can't see much more than that.
All right, where are you seeing this, Mark? I mean, did you think that the Welsh first half performance was sufficient to give you comfort with them being favourites for this game? Have you seen much from Australia so far that you feel like that maybe the market's not giving them quite enough credit?
Well, I think the match odds are absolutely fair. I think the handicap line is spot on, really. I think Wales deserve to be favourites for this match. Looking at that Georgia game, it's hard to make a real strong, fair judgment on Wales, because Georgia was so poor in that first 20, 30 minutes. Everything went wrong for them. It wasn't just their defence; their set piece failed, missed touch, dropped balls. It was just a comedy of errors, really, which I didn't anticipate. So, but Wales, absolutely fair enough. They executed things. They were very convincing with ball in hand and did the basics right. Everything I kind of expect from a Wales team under Warren Gatland. Just a fascinating match, this. I think Fiji's defeat to Uruguay probably gives this match a little bit more margin for error, really, if the two teams want to progress from the pool, which they really should do. They obviously met 4 years ago at this stage. I think it was the last game of the pool group, with England in that pool as well. Australia went into that as a 7-point favourites and won it 15-6. Obviously, plenty has changed since then. But people will talk about Wales's inferior record to Australia. 2 wins in 28 since 1991. Did beat them in Cardiff in November. That game ended 9-6. It was a pretty terrible game, but the Australian side will be very much different to that 15 that played in Cardiff, so I'm not going to read too much into that. I do think the historic trends of head-to-head record could play a part here. Australia will undoubtedly feel confident about getting one over on Wales despite the defeat in November. Historically, obviously, they do, so they'll feel good about themselves. And you feel, kind of reading into Michael Cheika's comments this week, especially after the ban to Reece Hodge, he's really kind of digging into that underdog spirit, the us against you mentality. Feels that the ban was overly harsh. Hodge didn't mean to do it, etc., etc. And that makes Australia dangerous for me. I think they're better probably from loose ball than Wales in open play. They tried to probably out Fiji in that first game, which just wasn't going to work really, and they finally got things together in the second half. But I am obviously, I've got doubts about both teams, but the doubts about Australia are they were 21-12 down in the second half. 4 of their 6 tries came in the final 24 minutes when Fiji tired. So, but yeah, I kind of echo what Sully said there about the set piece. I think Australia will really take it to Wales at scrum time at least. Wales lost 4 penalties at the scrum to Georgia, which we've talked about Georgia's strength in the front row, but that will certainly be an area Australia will target as well. I just think if this game does turn into be a tight physical contest, which you probably would imagine it will be, and I think Cheika believes it will be too, with the selection of Genia and Foley at halfback, I think Wales can kind of just come through it. But I wouldn't be confident about backing them at odds on, even though I think they are fair favourites. I actually think the total was probably absolutely spot on there with Sully. I'd rather be backing the unders than anything else in this match. As I said before, Wales only scored 10 tries in the Six Nations. They've been held to 21 points or fewer in 6 of the last 8 tests. And I think Australia's defence is much stronger than Georgia. So we could be in for quite a close battle, and I think the odds are spot on.
Is one really not to try and force a bet on, you think, on the outright or the handicap market?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's nothing really there for me. If I had to, I would back Wales at 1.8ish if that's available. But it's not something I'd go in there with much confidence, to be honest, because this is a game where you look at the two teams and you can pick flaws and you can pick positives from both. So I probably would hold off until I get to. Obviously, we have to hold off with the unders and overs lines, but I'd want to get a bit more grip on the weather before we get to Sunday, because hoping for a bit of rain. I think the game's in Tokyo, which is normally reasonably promising for a bit of damp weather before the match.
Yeah, might even want to take a look at it in play. I mean, I think there's so much in this game that is dependent on kind of key player performances, obviously, as all games are, but also a little bit on the weather and the conditions. But I would say it's going to depend a lot on how the breakdown is refereed, and who's getting on top of that. So it may even be one to take a look at it in play and maybe get involved once you sort of get a little sense of the game flow, first 5-10 minutes, and just how things are working on the pitch. What do you think, Sully?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously predicting the number that we kind of want it to be. We're trying to predict the realistic number. I mean, if there is rain coming, you could be looking at the 39-40.5 mark. But either ways, I mean, like Mark said, like Wales, if you just look back at their games through the Six Nations as well, they're under as kings. I mean, because defensively they're so strong anyway, and they're coming up against, like, I've yet to really see, especially at a World Cup stage, a bad defensive Australian side. They always get it together. They obviously have their roots in the rugby league defenses over there in Australia as well. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though. I mean, like that Mark doesn't want to pick a side here because pretty close to home he has some Australian bias, but we'll get into that some other time.
I mean, one place we definitely have bias on this podcast is Ireland.
Yeah, you're the guy with the Welsh shirt on behind him here in this thing. So
that thing, I didn't even know that was there. Didn't even know it was there. I mean, we've definitely got a bit of Irish bias here, but actually, we've got a decent balance here because we've got one incredibly optimistic Irishman in Sully O'Sullivan and one incredibly pessimistic Irishman in Mark O'Hare. But I mean, probably a more interesting betting contest, do we think? Ireland, Japan? I mean, talk us through the market, how it's looking at the minute, Sully, and maybe where you think the value's to be found.
Well, where we were saying about Mark being pessimistic, I was exactly in that spot last Friday talking about this Irish team. And I talked up Scotland saying it was a bit disrespectful that their price was 4.4 at the time of recording, close to 7-2. And actually, forget about all of that because they're frauds. The Scottish team are frauds, and they have been for some time now. I cannot trust them. We'll get into them in a while afterwards, but I cannot trust them. I remember being in a game before we get into this at Murrayfield about 3 years ago for Six Nations, and the cockiness out of the fans, the players, they haven't won a Six Nations since what, 94, 95, 1991? I don't know. I'm done with them. I'm done with them. Never again back in them. Come on, Samoa. Right, onto this one, Japan against Ireland. 21 is the line. It is creeping up at the moment. Total is 54.5. I really wanted this line to be at 16.5, 17.5.
Dreaming, mate.
Yeah, dreaming.
That was never going to be there.
Yeah, let's Mark have a first go off this one. I've got a few opinions on this, but only fair to give Mark to go on this one.
Yeah, well, Ireland were exceptional against Scotland, and it's not beat around the bush. I think everything they did perfectly, clinical, controlled the game superbly, suffocated Scotland. The weather obviously came to help in the second half too. But I saw an intent from Joe Schmidt there to empty the bench in the second half when the game was won. And for that reason, plus a few other really, I'm not keen on getting on Ireland with a big handicap around 20 or bigger. I've won 21, obviously 3 converted tries to be on my side here, but Japan with plus 21, if you can get it, is the bet for me here in this game. I think Ireland have got an intent there from the management to keep their players fresh and firing, injury-free as well, the further they go into the tournament. It is only Russia on Thursday, but Russia have been battling and decent enough in the first 2 games. They want to rest and rotate those players. So I could see widespread changes in the second half if Ireland get into a sort of 20-point lead in the second half. So, as an alternative, I'll be looking towards the winning margin, 11 to 20 for Ireland, a nice price. They should get this job done and done fairly well, but I just don't expect it to be the cakewalk that some people seem to believe it will be because, the kind of reactions to that first round games, Ireland were magnificent and Japan were so-so. Well, Japan, let's be fair to them, it was the first game on a huge occasion for them. I don't think they dealt with the expectation of being 40-point favourites very well. They looked very nervous, made plenty of basic errors in that game. If they can tighten up slightly, I think they'll be much better for this game. Obviously got the home advantage, huge fan support there. There'll be plenty of Irish there, of course, too, but the climate and conditions suit. They've got the best rest schedule of any side in this competition. Ireland got a 6-day turnaround for this. And also they want to keep the ball alive. And if the weather is good, we talked about Scotland's dangers last week with ball in hand on a nice day. Well, Japan are exactly in the same boat there. The weather is key for them. They've been training to try and keep the ball in play for as long as absolutely possible, far longer than your average test match at international rugby. So they're looking for this game to be an 80-minute game and to try and run Ireland ragged. Now, obviously, they're inferior in the pack and they should probably be out-muscled in this match. But I go back to it, the last 20 minutes, I wouldn't want to be back in Ireland to see out a 20-point lead when they start making changes. So just on Japan, in November they went to Twickenham to play England, performed very, very well for 60 minutes. They've been in camp for a lot longer this time around. The professional game is growing. The major concern really for Japan is Jamie Joseph has made 5 changes, dropped his captain Michael Leach to the bench. The star winger, whose surname I could pronounce, but probably will screw it up and make this an X-rated.
So you can be guaranteed Alan Bowden has backed him for top try scorer anyway, wherever he is.
I've backed bloody Reece Howard, just tell you
that. He's out, which is a blow, obviously. But there's talk that Japan, because of those changes, are leaving something in the tank for Samoa and Scotland, which is probably fair enough. But I'd be staggered if they tried to, I wouldn't say throw this game, but shift focus to those games and not focus everything into this match. They're at a home World Cup. They've got a decent track record of performing reasonably well for an hour against tier 1 teams. It's a big deal for them, this. And I think they'd be fools to just throw it away. And at the end of the day, it's only 5 changes. It's not like making 12 changes with a a focus on the 2 other games. And as I said again, the schedule suits them. They've got time to recover and rest. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Ireland beat this line, but it's not one I'd be confident about opposing. So, confident about being with. So for me, it's Japan. If you can get plus 21.5, fantastic.
Sully, what do you make of the Irish going into this? I mean, Carty for Sexton, is that a big, significant change to that team?
No, I don't think so anymore. No, honestly, don't. I've always been a big fan of Sexton, but I think what he has behind around Carty and Carberry, obviously Carberry's been injured, and he's probably going to get 30 minutes there, like Mark said. Ireland probably will make the changes come 50 minutes if they have any bit of a lead. Like before, you would have said if Sexton's not playing, that it might be worth 5 or 6 points to the Irish. Not anymore. I don't care what anyone says. He wasn't even on the kicks the last day. This is his last World Cup. It's probably possibly his last major tournament, even outside the Six Nations. I think, like, obviously, when we look back at that game last Sunday morning against Scotland, what was so impressive about it was the set-piece dominance. 10 out of 10 in scrums, 12 out of 12 in line-outs. This Japanese set-piece is going to struggle against this Irish set-piece in a big way. That's if it gets to this way. And I think this Irish team has enough experience to make it that way. They won't do what Australia did against Fiji and get into this kind of game of sevens, which absolutely will suit Japan. And on the other side of the coin, if we look at that Japanese performance against Russia on the opening night, and yes, I do take this whole, it's the opening night, the spotlight is on you, the eyes of the rugby world are on you. That is something that Japan are very much not used to. But I just couldn't understand a lot of the tactics. This kick, the amount of kicking, especially in the first half. When if you just looked up while you were watching on TV, if you just looked up on threes, you're like, you definitely had at least one man overlap on a lot of the times. And you're playing Russia. That should have been the tactic there. A big Russian side who have backs that look like forwards that you should try to run the legs off them. And so I'm not totally sure if we're going to get this Japanese performance that they're going to do something similar here, because there's nothing of evidence to say that in the first game. Yes, in the second half, they did open it up a bit, but it was kind of a case of Russia retiring. Yeah, we'll have it going up, but it was just exceptionally frustrating to see that. You know that this Japanese team, especially from watching the Sunwolves and Super Rugby, they have the ability to keep the ball alive. I think they had only 9 completed offloads, and the amount of knock-ons, and I think they're potentially a team that is going to be caught between 2 stools in the kind of game plan they want to play. If they want to probably play a bit of territory, and if they try this against the Irish, it's a waste of time. If we look back at the Scottish game, the Irish won the kicking battle hands down. The kick from hand 1,018 meters. So at 39 kicks, was 6 meters a kick. That means there are a lot of contestable kicks. They're just getting a lot of stuff right with the box kicks, even the crossfield kicks. Everything is good. The chase is good. And if they keep this any bit tight, they're going to absolutely destroy them up front. But the angle, and I kind of know where Mark is coming from towards the end. If they're up by 16 or 17, make changes. Japanese are always going to be dangerous if you're trying to cover the 19 or 20 point handicap. So the way I've gone at it, I'm going to take Ireland minus 9.5 in the first half. I think is a cracking bet for them to be up by at least 10 points at halftime. I think they come out, they set the agenda early, they kick for the corner, and they get that rolling ball going, and Japan will not be able to stop them. That's the way I'm playing.
In terms of the way Japan performed in that opening game, you kind of both have a pretty interesting view on that. There, do you think there's a tendency here maybe to focus on a result that maybe we should be ignoring, that we should possibly ignore that Russia game entirely?
I don't think it's about ignoring the result. It's just what I'm seeing there. And another thing, this guy Tamara at fly half. Now, he would have played with the Sunwolves in Super Rugby, but they brought in what's his name? God, his name has escaped me. They brought in a New Zealand guy to play 10. They brought him up from the Highlanders. He's like the 3rd or 4th guy, the Highlanders. He went to the Sunwolves. Great kicker. His name will come back to me in a minute, or guarantee once we press stop recording. And Tamara wasn't on the kicks. He's a terrible goal kicker as well. So he just looked lost in the first game. And he's coming up against Jack Carty, who's a guy that will come under the radar for a lot of guys. But if you have watched his performances with Connacht in the last year or two, He's probably one of the most improved fly halves in Europe. He's a terrific guy to get the ball into the corner, and that will be the Irish tactic here. Do not expect Ireland to play any rugby in their own half, their own 22. It's about playing territory. If they want Japan want to run it back, let them run it back. But I just think Japan will probably maybe try to be a bit too cute here and try more of the kicking game they did against Russia. That's what I'm banking on. And I think to get to 10 points ahead at halftime, I think that's a solid enough.
Any view on the total? We've got 54.5 at the minute up there.
Mark, anything? Nothing for me in it.
Not really. It's very difficult. I think with Ireland games, it might be my natural pessimism, I'm not sure, but I'm always kind of keen to keep low-scoring games on side. So Joe Schmidt's not the most adventurous of coaches. That's probably being a tad harsh. He's kind of prefers function over flash. So I would kind of agree there with Sully about Ireland kind of getting ahead. They've got an outstanding record of being ahead at half-time and closing out games under Joe Schmidt. The complete opposite when they're chasing games at half-time. So if they do get into a comfortable lead at half-time, I can just see them kind of closing the game out as they did against Scotland. So no, I wouldn't really want to be chasing a high total.
Yeah, I mean, let's move on to one of the other games of the weekend.
Just one more thing on that.
Yeah, sorry.
Just the first try scorer bet. He's kind of, the cat is kind of out of the bag because I think he's got like 2 in the last 4 games. But James Ryan at 30.0 first try scorer. He is picking up a lot more ball at the base of the ruck. He's becoming a far more agile ball carrier. He got obviously the one against Scotland. You could have backed that at 50.0. Again, like I said, cat is small bit out of the bag, but still value there at 30.0 if you're looking for a first try scorer.
30.0, now you're talking my language, sorry. That's the kind of bets I'm all over, mate. I'm more than happy with that. I mean, we could have had 50.0 on Uruguay, couldn't we, Mark? I mean, what the one that got away, playing Georgia on Sunday. Any views on this game?
Yeah, I say tentative. I mean, most of my bets this weekend at the moment are tentative, but I really wanted to be with Uruguay with the start here. They've very much improved. They've invested huge amounts of money back home. The game's now turned professional. They've built a major centre of excellence to develop things in Montevideo. The state funding's been absolutely superb. I think they've got 10 players actually who've gone to America to play in the professional league over there as well. Favour this kind of exciting attack-minded game, which we saw against Fiji. Got a lovely mix of youth and experience too. The issue really for me here with Uruguay is at scrum time. I think they're undoubtedly weaker than Georgia, not just Georgia, but across most of the teams in this competition. The bigger issue is the 4-day turnaround and the travel too. I think that it's kind of about 500 Ks from each stadium between the first and the second game. Obviously creates a bit more travel, exerted huge energy, huge emotion on Wednesday for that victory against Fiji. They probably would have targeted this game first as a realistic chance of getting a win, but obviously now they've got that win, their kind of mindset might change. I'm not so sure, but yeah, it's kind of cooled me a little bit really. I'd probably rather Georgia on the first half handicap now rather than the full-time handicap because they might well lose their legs. I think they've only made 2 changes to their team, whereas Georgia have made widespread changes because we touched on it there against Wales, but they were desperately disappointing in that first half. 29-0 down at half-time, the game was over. Did improve a lot after the break, but it's hard to really judge them on that because the game was over. Signs that their set piece was very strong as we'd expect, which I should, will give them a solid platform here too. But a lot of negatives too. They have got a good record in the last 4 years of beating teams, tier 2 teams who you'd associate with probably being a bigger, more aggressive bunch, the Samoans, the Tongans, Fijians, etc. But I normally associate Georgia with keeping them on side with steep handicaps as underdogs. And obviously didn't go well against Wales. I'm not sure they're as reliable when they're forced to overcome a big handicap hurdle like we have here. So I think probably the changes or the lack thereof from Uruguay might play in the second half. So if you can get +10 or bigger, then I'd get Uruguay on the first half handicap.
Do you have a view on this one, Sully?
Yeah, it's hard to pick a side. I mean, current line, it was 16.5 during the week. It's trending up towards about 18 now. Georgia have made a kind of number of changes here. Uruguay have made a few changes, but obviously they're just lacking that bit of depth. Like Mark said, quick turnaround. The thing that would worry me that was probably the physical toll that they went through. I mean, it's 181 tackles against Fiji. They missed 48, which will tell you how. Well, it'll tell you one of 2 things, that their scramble was really good, the scramble D was really good, and also tell you that Fiji were exceptionally wasteful, and it wasn't a game I actually saw live at the time. Watched it back that evening, and it just looked like that Fiji just completely took them for granted, that this was just going to be a bit of a cakewalk. They made plenty of changes themselves. Obviously, the Fijian management had, earmarked this from a fair bit out, that this was the game that they were going to give guys a rest before they get back into the Welsh, cycle into the Welsh game. And it just struck me as something like, it was a fantastic story, but like Fiji, they've beaten France in the last couple of years and been competitive in a lot of games. They should be winning that game. Goal kicking from Uruguay was really good. I didn't realise that their fly half Chasey plays with Dax in the Pro D2 in France. So I mean, any goal kicker, even in top 14 or D2, that's kicking in France is a good goal kicker, and that's always vital in these situations where they're able to take their points. The angle I'm probably looking at, Al, is defensively. I think both these sides are not great at all, and I do think, in fairness, Georgia have tried to expand their attacking game. They're obviously noted for their scrum, their maul, and their big set piece. And Uruguay, from what I saw, just wanted to keep this game quick, and they'll probably try to do that here. I mean, that would be a good tactic against Georgia. But what I have seen from Georgia is that they can play a bit of ball, and if they get the offloading game going, passes the stick. Look, we have no total, but this is just my guess looking at the handicap. If it's double digits like it is, like 18 or 19, it would have to be low 50s. So I would suggest if it's 50.5, 51.5, 52.5, I would be taking the over. There is rain in Kamagaya on Saturday. I think. I know. Wait. Let me finish. It's on Saturday, I think. So it should be gone for Sunday. But look, do not take my word for that. Just we're up early on Sunday morning. Yeah, let's be honest about it. The thoughts of getting out of bed at 5:30 on a Sunday morning for Georgia and Uruguay, Alan, it would have been a tough sell. But if we have a bet and we have a bet on the total, it's an easy one.
Yeah, I think my kid will have me up in the morning, so I'll be betting on that one regardless.
There you go, Mark. We got to get one of those. Get us up. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you between you? That seems like an odd way to do it.
He's way out of my league. Mark's way out of my league.
Punch in there, mate. Punch in. I mean, let's move on to your favourite team then, Sully. Scotland, Samoa.
Do we have to? Okay.
No. Yeah. But let's just move on. We'll forget about them. Forget they exist.
Yeah, I think like Mark said, it's just a very tricky weekend. I mean, we could look at every game here and give it selection, but I don't think we'd be doing anyone the service here of anyway by just
guessing. Bets is never the way forward.
We have no teams as well. Mark might have a small view on this. 17.5 Samoa getting the start. Mark, what are you thinking?
I'd probably want a little bit bigger than that if I was going with Samoa. I think Scotland have a huge amount to prove, and I think they've been backed into a corner now. Sully's right. They were talking up big last week before the Irish game. Very, very confident. They've been kind of gone back with their tail between their legs. They've got something to prove. I do think there's the makings of a good team there. I think they might have just gone a little bit off track from where Vern Cotter was 4 years ago, maybe Gregor Townsend, trying to force things a little bit too much. It's exciting and thrilling when it gets going, but it's only really getting going at Murrayfield. They really, really struggle outside of Scotland to put this game plan into good use. Traditionally, their games against Samoa are very tight, very competitive. You go back 4 years, they were in the same group as each other. Scotland only just won that match. You can look at all the positives, the fact that they're scoring 30 or more points in 11 of 28 games under Townsend, averaging 3 tries or more since 2017. All lovely stuff, but the fact is that 3 wins from 9 came against Georgia and Italy. They've lost one of their best players in Hamish Watson too. Samoa are no easy meat. They'll be there to bring the physicality. They'll have watched what Ireland did, especially in defence, and they'll be trying to take similar cues from that game. We saw what they're all about in their first group game. So more of the same I'd expect here, but I think the big negative really is Samoa got two days rest deficit compared to Scotland after that Russia game. So the handicap doesn't have a huge appeal for me. I'd like to see the teams before I took a view, but if I had to choose something right now, it would probably go towards the winning margin of 11 to 20 towards Scotland. I do expect them to win and win with a little bit more room to spare than we probably expect, but it's not going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about not forcing bets, but is there any views on the other 2 games that we haven't mentioned? Argentina, Tonga, South Africa, Namibia?
I mean, South Africa are 59-point favorite. There's only
That's
80
big.
minutes. Yeah, there's only 80 minutes in the game. So, but again, would you really want to be taking maybe against?
No.
I mean, just looking at that South African team, when you have the likes of Shaq Brits at number 8, that they're going to want to play a very definitive style of keep the ball alive here. No Chelsea Colby. He'll come off. This guy is going to come off the bench with 20 minutes to go, and he could get 3 tries himself. I mean, we saw that game against New Zealand the last day. Whatever the Japanese TV directors were doing, we never even got to see half of the replays of his line breaks against New Zealand. But they're out of this world, and he's going to have to get off the mark. And good for your guy in Pimpy, Al, that he's starting here. Yeah, this could be big opportunity.
Is it too much to ask to get 7 tries in this game? Really? Is that greedy?
No.
No,
absolutely not. The only thing is, though, he's going to be substituted for Colby probably. So they're going to leave Nkosi on the other wing. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you now, he's the only one I've not backed. Nkosi, he's going to score 6. So get on any multi-try markets on that, lad, because it's nailed.
59-point favourite. What's the total? Do you want to have a guess? Don't look. Do you want to have a guess?
Mate, this is not my area of expertise. I wouldn't have a clue. It was probably, what, 70?
75.5.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they scoring that many points?
Yeah, well, I saw, like, Namibia, to be fair, probably have a try in them. I mean, a lot of these guys play kind of with the lower teams in the Currie Cup in the South African Premier Division.
Massive game for them.
Yeah, huge game for them. And, you know, I think there's probably a good respect factor there as well, that South Africa, you know, with Rassie there, they've good neighbours, there's good relations with Namibia, like I said, through the Currie Cup. And, you know, I can't see South Africa just putting points on them for the sake of it. I don't think it's one of those games. But, I mean, look, just 59 and you're like, it seems right, doesn't it? I mean, I think if you put Andy up in the 40s, everyone would be flowing into South Africa. But, 50. If I had to, if gun to my head, I'd probably take them maybe just in the sense that they probably could get a try, or maybe 2. They've got a decent goal kicker, so you just never know.
Any views on that one, or possibly Argentina-Tonga, Mark?
I did have a view on Argentina-Tonga. I'm kind of cooling on it a little bit. Just on the
story of the day. Story of the day from you.
The South African-Namibia game. It's just it's kind of the games like this. I respect we need these teams, emerging nations, to be in the competitions, but it's not a good look for rugby to have these kind of massive handicaps and one-sided games. The non-rugby fans are sneering at it. It's not a good look. So, but Argentina-Tonga, you have to go back to November 2016 for the last time Argentina won by 27 points or more. They did it twice in the 2015 World Cup against Georgia and Namibia. Obviously, the level of opposition is far higher for Argentina than most teams, but they have dropped out Sanchez for this game, and Tonga have got a decent record on the handicap against Tier 1 teams. I think they've only made 4 changes. I think if you can get them at a half-time handicap with a 15-point start or more, there could be interest there. They're only 18-3 down against England at the break, 24-17 down, I think, to Wales before they got hammered last year. They've completely changed their back line, which didn't really function against England. Weren't really given a huge amount of opportunity there, but the pack remains the same. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they kept things competitive and then sort of fell apart in the second half there. But yeah, I've kind of cooled on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the first half line at the minute on Matchbook is 12.5, and that doesn't feel like a play, does it?
No, not at all. No.
Yeah, I think it's caught that. So the main line is 27, 28.5, but obviously you're taking a few points off of the first half handicap, because I think the lines makers they're wise to that with Tonga, that they will give you a good 50 minutes, and they have shown the past couple of games that, especially against New Zealand in the warm-up, that they will suffer. It's hard to be backing Argentina, a team who haven't won a test in a long time, with that kind of number, you know. Again, that might be one that we may just stay in bed for. That's a 5:45 kickoff, Al. So.
We're getting up for all of them, Sully. But
all right, okay.
Just on that, and it's very difficult, obviously, in these kind of podcasts to find markets which aren't available yet, or might not be there till the day of the game or even half time. But on a lot of these games, the second half handicap is arguably the best play of all of them. You know, Argentina to overcome. If the handicap's 27 and you're looking at 12, probably a 14, 15 point second half handicap. That's achievable. The same as Scotland against Samoa. Georgia against Uruguay. These teams have come off short turnarounds, made massive changes as well. That's kind of my favourite angle in these games mostly, but very difficult to find prices and odds before a match.
Yeah, I'll add just one to that. The other one I've been kind of looking at throughout the tournament so far, if you just let general game flow, the second half first scoring play is still available kind of, up until half time. And if you're just looking at the game dynamics, I was looking at Italy and Canada the last day, and obviously when Italy were, they were a good bit ahead, they're going to be kicking for the corners. So just keep that in mind that, in tighter games, teams are going to obviously go for the post, and, when the big game dynamic goes our way, both teams are kicking for the corner, and there's value in tries at that stage rather than taking up penalties.
Yeah, I think generally there's a lot of value to be found in play and second half markets. You just keep an eye on the game flow, because often they don't necessarily adjust in the way they should.
No. At the end of the day, they're generally all modelled off the the pre-match total. So what you can kind of see yourself, the model can see. It's generally you input a score, it goes from the pre-match thing line, and it doesn't react accordingly. But that's maybe a different podcast for another day. Yeah,
man versus bot. You've been pretty tentative today, Mark. Let's wrap it up with best bet of the weekend. Where's your money going to be headed? If you were betting with my money, what would you put it on this weekend?
It's very difficult to say without knowing the figure, but probably unders in the Wales-Australia game. I think there might be an expectation that this game could be quite open and exciting, where I actually think it could be the opposite. I think it might be tight, attritional, physical, and very closely fought. We can see that in the pre-game handicaps. So, and also in recent meetings 4 years ago exactly. So, I'd be going for the unders in the Australia-Wales game.
Yeah, I don't understand why people think that Gatland would want to play the type of game that Australia wants to play. Exactly. So that just makes perfect sense to me. Sully, where's your money going this weekend?
Total agreement with Mark. Got to wait for that number for Wales and Australia. Hopefully it's about 45.5, 46.5. Ireland -9.5 first half handicap's my best bet of the weekend.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, well, good luck, gents. Thanks everyone for joining us again. We'll be back for the next instalment soon. Thanks for joining us, and have a lucky weekend.